My name is Shannon Bedingfield, and I do want to welcome all of you to today's webinar. This class is intended to give you a look at some of the new features in version 9. I'm going to go through today's material, and then we're going to have some time at the end for any questions that you might have. So the questions that we're going to go through at the end, anything that you have, we're going to go through the chat here in the webinar. And then I'll read your questions and I'll answer them out for everyone to hear. If you haven't found it already, I know some of you have, there's a drop-down menu at the top of your screen, and there'll be a chat function in there, and that's where you can gain access to that. If you do have any technical difficulties, I want you to look for Jacob Stowe in our list of attendees. He's my wingman here today. So if you do have any technical difficulties, send him a message and he'll try to get you sorted out. So just so everybody's on the same page, I'm going to open up the About Solid just to show you that I am running Solid Ultimate version 9, build 149. So if you're looking at a different level of Solid, or if you're in a different build or an older version, some of what I have on my screen might be different from what you see when you go back to your computer. So what I'm going through today is just kind of the new things that have been brought in with version 9. And I'm going to start up here in the Preferences. There is a new tab has been added, and it is Lights. This particular tab will allow you to adjust how bright or how dim the automatic lights are for your photo vision. So you've got your ambient, headlight, and main lights, and then the automatic lights that come in at the room level, you can even turn those off and adjust the percentage, how bright they are. You also have these three will be available for the assembly level and also the part level. So if you are looking at and rendering in those areas as well, you can kind of adjust some of what's going on with those lights before you even get there. The next area I'm going to go to is the Part Manager, formerly called the Part Catalog. And really the Part, Material, and Material Schedules managers are all going to have a very different new look and feel about them. So here's the Part Manager, and we still have our list over here on the left-hand side of all the different schedules that we have set up, and that's where you'll find your actual parts and pieces for the cabinetry, the drawer boxes, your guide layouts, and all of those things. So if I go and I'll open up Case and select Interior, and the list in the main portion of this window is going to contain all of my interior cabinet parts. We have the name still. This is the name that Solid recognizes. The description, that's the name that you're going to see on your cut list. So whatever you call anything out as, that's the description you want to have in here. In some levels of Solid, you might have labor setup, labor each, which you'd be putting in minutes of time of how long it takes to do some operation part of doing that particular part. You have your price list, and you can also set up matrices for pricing as well. In the CNC tab, these are basically yes or no. Do you want this particular part to optimize? With an X in the box, it will optimize. If I had that without the X in it, it would not go to the optimizer. Ignore grain. If you want this particular part not to worry about what way the grain direction is going, that's when you put an X in the box. Otherwise, if you want it to follow grain, if it's a grained material, we'll leave those unchecked. The CNC column, does this part, is it available to go to your CNC machines? In the Finishes tab, do you want the exterior color on the face, back, edge, or end of the part. So for this bottom, I have an exterior finish color on the face of it, but it's going to have the interior color on the rest. The textures, same thing. Do you want it to have the exterior texture on the face, back, edge, or end? Same thing I've got going on here with the bottom. It's got the face texture for the exterior, but it's using the interior textures on the back, edge, and end. This whole area right here is new. There will be an option that we're going to see a little bit later on where you can actually assign an interior and an exterior texture for the job or for the room. So it can, kind of like you do your finished colors, you assign an interior and exterior color for their job. You will now be able to do the same thing with texture. If I do need to add another part, I have my new button over here. You give it a name, which is going to be the code that Solid reads, and then your description of what you want to see in your cut list. Now, if I am in banding, that's going to look a little bit different. If I do a new banding, I'm given a choice of codes. So I would just select the code I want, give this a description where what I want to see. When I hit OK, it gets added to my banding list. So depending on where you are, what group of parts you're looking at, new might behave a little bit differently. So I'm going to go ahead and return out of here. Sorry, I keep wanting to go to the X. And next we're going to go to the Material Manager. So similar look as what we had with the Part Manager. There is a search function that's new to this, and I could just simply type in something, some part of a name of something I'm looking for, and it will list all of everything that has oak in it. So if you look down here, you'll see I've got panel stock, I've got edge banding, there's some board stock, there's even hardware. So it's pulling from all of the different categories, not just one category, one individual category, but all of them. So you can kind of group things together. You can also, if there's something you search for on a daily basis, if you make this search often enough, you can actually create your own filter. And if I do that, I'll hit New, and I have to call it out what I want to look for. And then down here, I tell it what I'm looking for in that particular filter. So am I searching on the ID number, the name of the material, the description, what category am I looking for? Does it have to be identical, not identical? Is it similar to, does it start with, does it end with? So you've got some compare options. And what are you going to compare to? So what am I searching? I'm actually just going to search melamine. And then there's a grouping option if it has to be grouped. And I'm just going to leave that at none. I just want it to pull up anything with melamine in it. So when I hit OK on this, I'll save my changes. Now I can select my filter, and it will pull up everything that has melamine in the name of it. So you can kind of create those based on your needs, based on the types of things you're looking for and maybe you need to filter through. In the lower portion over here, these are our different categories. So just like the tabs we used to have across the top of the windows of the material catalog, we now have them over here on the side, and I can just select the one that I'm looking for, and it is going to bring up, in this case, all of my panel stock. You can make your own make your own categories. So if you look through this list, you're going to see there are a few extra things that we didn't have before. There were never their own little leg or leg leveler categories. There's even one in here for casters and connectors. So there are new categories in here, but you can make your own. If I have a category selected, and I'm not trying to rename it, but if I have a category selected and I hit the new category, create a group, it will actually have it as a part of that, as a subgroup. And I can rename this to whatever I want. And you can also reorganize. So maybe I didn't mean to do that. I wanted the new group, but I didn't realize I was on that. By having this one selected, you'll see these arrows across here. It gives you options of what you can do with this. If I arrow this over, it now becomes its own category, not a subcategory. You can also change its ranking. So if you've added something and you want to throw it at the top of the list, I can just hit that button all the way up to the top, and it'll be the first one that I find. So they don't have to be in alphabetical order like they are right now. Also, if this is a category that you've created, you can certainly delete that group out of there if you don't want it. The main portion of this window is going to work similar in a fashion. It's going to work similar to what we had before. You can toggle by use of these headers. So if you want to group by a certain way, I can just select description here, and it'll now alphabetize everything by description, and I can scroll through and find what I'm looking for. Right now, because I haven't selected anything, there's really not much in this materials area that I can do other than create a new material. That new material, you can choose, you will be choosing what category, what group that material is going to go into, and depending on what that group is, you'll have either a next button to go ask you more questions, or it'll just say finish, and then you can finish it up from the screen there. Because I've selected a panel stock, I can choose, what is the unit of issue? Is it a sheet? Is it a board foot, square foot? How am I issuing that? What is the size of that? And what's the thickness of the material? Then I can also assign a finish color to it, a finish type, and a texture. That's for the face, the back, the edge, and the end as well. So you can make those modifications, hit finish, and then that gets added to the list. And then anything else you need to do, we can do from in here. So I'm on the Material tab first, and I've got the description, the type, so it's in the panel stock category, how I'm purchasing basically. There is a default vendor listed. We're going to look at vendors in just a little bit. Default cost, sell price, and markup percentage if you're putting those things in there. Do you charge sales tax, or I'm sorry, do you pay sales tax on that? And then what's your default tax rate? What's your waste percentage? And this estimate column, do you want it to go to bid? If there is a check or an X in the box, it will go to your bids. If it is not, it won't. It won't be listed in any bidding, any pricing that you set up for it. The CNC gives you the options of optimizing. Is there grain on that material? Is it dependent on grain? What would you consider a drop? Something that you would be willing to keep, I guess, something large enough to hang on to it as scrap. Feed rate, spindle speed, minimize chipping, face, back, chipping, do you want it to climb cut, and maximum depth of cut. Composite I'll come back to in just a bit. Size, is the size of the sheet that I've set it up as and the thickness. So if you need to come in and modify that, you can. Also finish types and textures. Now I could also get to those things by having the item selected and going to Properties. It gives me access to all of these again. So all those from the first tab. Then there's our size tab. I can climb down here, the CNC. So you can get to this in a couple of different ways. I'm going to come back to that. So I'll close this out for just, no, well, might as well mess with this one since I'm here. In this advanced area, we've got a couple of other options that are in here. And I am going to start with vendors now. So this vendors area opens up a new manager window. And it allows me to add vendors to this particular material. So I've got a couple I've created. I can add, just select the one I want, arrow it over. If I do use multiple vendors, I can add each of those vendors in there. If you have multiples, you can also change your default. So, okay, I normally go with the cheap guy, but sometimes I can't for some reason. These have all been added in. I can say who my default is, and then if I go to the bid center, I'll be able to select it at that point if I want to use somebody different, if I need to use somebody different from that. The select, pull this in. We're not doing that yet. We'll come back to that. I'm getting out of order here. So another one in the advanced is a kit. And I'm actually going to close out of this material so you can see another option in here, something that might make a little more sense. So like on this hinge, I can set up, my cost and my sell price and all that stuff for that particular hinge. And what we've done in the past is, padded them out a little bit to allow for any kind of screws or hinge plates or anything like that. Well, now we have a place for our hinge plates. We have a place to put all these other things. What I can do is create a kit of all the things that need to go with this particular hinge. So when that hinge gets used, it pulls in those other items with it. So if I find I think I put it in miscellaneous. There it is. I created a hinge screw, and I can arrow it over here. And there's my hinge screw. I've added that to the kit, and I can change the quantity of it. So I want 2 screws per hinge to be added to it every time I get that in there. So you can kind of build this, because the hinge screw itself has its own pricing, has its own everything already, but now I'm adding it in there, grouping it with the item it goes with. The model option can be helpful if you want to show what that, in this case, piece of hardware is. You can bring in a SKP file, a SketchUp file, or a DXF file. So if it's a hinge you're bringing in, if it's a pole, if it's some graphic for a guide, you can get a couple different types of images that you can import in and actually import it into this so you can see it when you get into a job. So that's where that model is coming from. It's going to allow us to bring in that image. We do have the view mode. You can choose which plane you're looking at. There's also a 3D, so you can see what that particular piece looks like. There's even a render if that's going to help you visualize it a little bit better. Return out of here for now. The one I skipped in here, or one of the ones I skipped in here, this composite, I'm going to switch gears on you again. I added a panel stock. And where are you? There you are. So I've created this panel stock and I've called it out as a composite. That's one of my options in the new. So if I look at the properties on this, I have the ability to tell it what is a part of that composite. So if it's an MDF core, let me find my MDF. So I'll do a 3/4 MDF core. So I can double click on it or use the arrow, whatever you're comfortable with there. I need to find then, where are my laminates are at the top here. So I'll find my laminate that I'm going to use. I'll just grab that one. And go by type. I created there. I've got a backer that I've created. So I can put my parts and pieces that make up this composite. You can change their order. So I want the laminate on top. You can select whether they're going to be cut face up or face down. And you can put in an oversize. So I can put in that I need this oversized to 1/2 inch. I need the backer oversized to 1/2 inch so I can lay them up. So I'm establishing what that sandwich is going to be made out of. There is another option as to whether it's pre-assembled or not. If you're going to put the composite, if you're going to lay up 4x8 and then cut out your parts and pieces with it, that would be considered pre-assembled. If you are going to cut out the MDF, cut out the laminate and the backer, and then glue it up once it's to size or oversized, whichever, then that's not considered pre-assembled. That will be a false. So you have some control over how you're putting them together, when you're putting them together, but they can still come in as a single unit for the drawings and give you all the necessary information for it. The copy is just like it always has been. Whatever I'm selected on, I'm going to give it a copy, and I'll get another one at the bottom of the list. So there's my copy 1. I can delete any that I don't want, and it's going to ask me if I'm sure about that. And I'm going to switch gears again. Let's look at a poll for this alias option. Alias is going to be very similar to a copy, but it actually will attach it as almost like a subcategory. And that's what these plus signs are for. That's telling me I have an alias associated with that 3-inch bar pull. So each of these, for the almond is the parent here. I've got a white, an oak, and a brass. So they're the same pole, just in a different material, different color or different material. So that's where the alias comes in. I can just simply grab that one, add a new alias to it, and what is it going to be? So I'll do a Okay, and now that gets listed alongside it. So basically it's the same thing, I just need another version of it. So I can do that, and then maybe I'm going to go and change the color on it. But that's going to be the only difference between them. The finish area looks a little bit different. You have the drop down so you can select what finish you're looking at. There is also this search option, which is kind of like the search option we have in the 3D view within a job, is that I can type in part of the name and it's going to take me to that area, so I can find things a little bit quicker that way. We have a color picker in here, so you can assign your color that way by choosing out of the rainbow here. You still have the red, green, and blue, and you also have a slider, so you can slide and adjust your color. So you can kind of manipulate whatever kind of changes you need to do here. The finish types, kind of the big deal thing that's changed here is the preview area. They're using the actual PhotoVision lighting, so you're going to get a better representation of what it's going to look like in PhotoVision, rather than the last one. The last one wasn't using the same type of lighting, so we weren't getting the full effect of what it was going to be. You can change the color, change what color the light is that's shining on it, adjust the brightness, and you can add texture, which is what I just took off. So I can select what kind of texture I want to put on that and see what that looks like for my preview. The texture section, we have a couple different ways of looking at the textures now. If I select, I'll just go to wood for right now, I'm looking at them in a thumbnail view, or I can look at them in a list view and you'll actually see the information about them in this list view. So if I've decided my my texture here isn't represented, by the right size, I may need to adjust the tile size, that kind of thing. Even if you're in the thumbnail view, all you would have to do is double click on it and you'll get that information up, so you can modify where and what you need to. If you are creating a new one, you're going to be importing in an image, giving it a name, assigning its size. So it's not a width and a length. The world width and the world height are, what does that picture represent, so that it can be scaled properly in your drawings, whether you're going to tile it or not. So if the pattern repeats, and if it's a decal. Now the decal is the same option as before. It was worded differently. It was blend with finish color or something along those lines. These wood grains are not going to have decal checked. They're gonna come in and then they're going to put the finish color on top of it. If I'm looking at one of the floors or one of the walls or something like that that has its own color, that has its own pattern, those are actually going to be decals, because you don't want them to be, they don't want them interfered with the color that's going on in the room. The vendor managing area is where you go to create your vendors. And they have added a few different options in here. A lot of it is the same as what we saw before, but they've added country, they've added a field for mobile phone, and a sales tax per vendor. So those are the new fields in here for the vendors that you can, if you You know what sales, you know where they're at, what sales tax they're charging. You can actually input that right in here. So it follows with the vendor instead of having to just put it on the material itself. And I haven't been flipping pages, so I'm going to have to double check that I didn't skip something in here. I think I've got them. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and return out of this. I'm going to go to the material schedules. So instead of that big long drop down that we've had in the past, we're all putting it in one manager window. Add new, copy, delete. There's here the top drop down is where I'm going to select what type of material schedule I want to look at. I'll just stick with assembly here. And the lower one, once you've chosen the category, the lower one lets you select what particular schedule, the individual schedule you want to look at. So I'll go down here. Not too different from this portion of it anyway. We just open up the part you want to get to. You still have the icons here, so the yellow boards match the parent. The ones with the check marks don't. If I do want to change, actually I'm going to do this one. If I do want to change this for some reason, I come over here to look for, there's my panel stock, and I'm just going to grab one of these. So I'll select the one I want, and I can arrow it over. So the exposed is what was highlighted, so that's what's going to change. And everybody that matched it will change along with it. The other thing I can do is I can double click on it, or actually I lied. It's the drag. This one will allow me to drag in. So if I want to drop it on that particular element, it'll change it and follow suit. You still have the right-click option of, match the parent material. So exposed is going to look up at case and go back to what it needed to be there. So it's not a whole lot different. There is also a search in here to narrow your search window down at this point too. So you can, type in and search based on that, so you can find your materials a little bit easier instead of what I did and I scrolled through all that stuff. You can pick them up this way with your filters. Okay, I'm going to return out of this. And now you'll see we have a molding manager and a profile manager. These two are very similar. The molding is going to be all of your like crown molding and baseboard and chair rail and those types of things. Your profile manager is going to house the bead molding and your countertop edging. So there's slightly different uses and purposes in there, so that's why they've kind of separated them out. So if I go into molding, see that look and feel is kind of going across the board here. They all have that same similar look about them. With a new, there's two options in it. It doesn't just bring up a new window. You're either selecting and creating a molding, or you can create a molding set. You can copy whatever one you're currently looking at and delete. Your top drop down lets you look at, if you're doing casing or chair rail or whatever you're working with, you can change that. And then once you've selected your type of molding, then you can select the profile you want to look at. I'm going to go back into Crown. You do have the ability to render it, color it in, give it texture if need be. I'm looking at it in 2D. There's also a 3D mode. I can actually hit the button, which will allow you to see it extruded out. The length of that extrusion is going to be here. So if you want to see how, if it's like a dental molding or something like that, if you want to see how the pattern repeats, you can adjust your sample length here. There is an import option that you can import, again, a SketchUp file or a DXF file. So you can bring in your molding that way. So if you have a version of it from a website, from another source, you can import that in directly. The reset is kind of a hard reset. It will basically make it into whatever thickness and height it is, it's just going to be square. So there won't be any shape on it at all. So it just takes all the shaping away from it. Edit isn't available from 3D. I would have to be in the 2D mode to grab that edit. So I'm just going to go ahead so I can go through a couple more new things. I'm going to go ahead and create a new molding. So I've got my crown. I can choose my category for it over here. Is it part of a set, or is this a set? So it's going to be a yes or no here. Thickness and height is always, as always, it's based off the size and shape of it. And there's this last update option. So you can see the last time you went in and modified and changed your molding, if you did go in there. There's your costing options as well as that sample size. If I want to edit it, this is when I'm going to do it by my shaping tools. Now here's the first place we've gone today that I can bring this up. Throughout Solid now, throughout every level of Solid, the shaping tools have all gone to the CAD tools. So if you were running advanced or standard or one of the other levels, you're going to start seeing these CAD tools for your shaping throughout the program. The exception to that is the door manager. The door manager is still with the old tools. So that one didn't get updated into this type of shaping. But everything else did, and we'll see this a few more times as we go on today. So I could manually shape this, draw this, whatever it is that I'm attempting to create. And I also have the ability to import a DXF file from here. So depending on your DXF will determine, if you want to do it back at the last screen or if you're going to do it here. So I'll just browse and find my molding. Let's try that one. And I forgot one thing. Just to make my life easier, I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to change, so I'm going to change to millimeters. Just because of how this molding was created, it just makes my life easier if I just start with what it was. So let me grab that again. And I will import. And I've got something really weird going on in my DXF file. So it needs to be fixed. But I just take that title out because that's just something extra that shouldn't have been brought into the DXF file, and that's what makes this so tiny. But I'll go ahead and hit OK. And then I can place this molding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it here. And you see it, for the way our moldings go, it's backwards. It also doesn't replace the lines that are already here. So I am going to just go ahead and delete each of these. I don't need these lines. I'm going to select all of this, And I'm going to go to transform to mirror it. I want to get it moving in the right direction. I also want to bring it to that point there. So I just grabbed the whole thing as it was selected and brought it in. So bringing in those DXFs, in my case, is probably a lot easier than my having drawn that by hand. So if I return out of here, I want to save the shape, and there is my new molding. I can now go to 3D and see it in the 3D view. It wants to lose its bottom point there, and we can color it in. And I'm about ready to use that then. All right. So, and since I did that and I didn't really go over it, this is one of the other things that's changed. And this happens throughout the program where we have our inches to millimeters. They've simplified that. You just click on millimeters, in my case here. It'll change it to inches, change it back. You're not clicking and selecting. You're just toggling. And then for the set precision, there you will get your list of your different options. So however you want to change your precision, how you want to see that. I'm going to go ahead and return out of here. And if I go to Profile, very similar. It's going to be very similar to what we were just looking at. You know, here's, well, this is one I was messing with yesterday or the other day. New top edging. If I want to modify the shape, I'll go into Edit. And again, I'm going to use those tools to, you know, adjust this shape, figure it out what I want that particular molding to do. And let's see here. I'll just do a quick, well, I'll just top edging. Yeah. I'm just going to do a fillet. So I've got this fillet. Let's do a 3/16 fillet on that front corner. And let's do it again on the bottom. So I just selected the lines that I want to have a radius on them, and it gives me my radius. And I'll take this guy. It'll be a funny looking one. I'll bend this out a little bit to get a strange little shape on there. So there's my top edging. I return out, then I can save the shape. And I've got my little detail. I'm going to return out here. Let's see here. Now let's go to the door catalog. There's really not a lot in the door catalog, but there's one thing in here that if you use it, you might really like this one. In the construction tab, actually I should point this out. I'm on a routed MDF door, or a routed door, I should say. On the construction tab, if you are using that door template, we have a soften corners option, and that's always been there. You say, yes, you want the soft corners, or no, I want sharp square corners. What we have now, if we say, yes, I want softened corners, you have the ability to determine what that softened radius is at the door. So it'll adjust that door, and it can be individual. In the past, that corner radius was established in the S2M center, but it was for all of the doors. So if they were said to be a softened corner, they all got the same radius. So now you have the ability to assign that radius per door as you're building it. And then you don't have to worry about it later on at the S2M, whether you've changed that option where you needed to. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility here with this area. But that's really the only new new business, should I say, in the door catalog. In the assembly wizard, not a ton of new things, but a couple. With a face frame construction, you will have the ability, I'm going to go into assembly boring, and I'm going to say, yes, we're going to do holes, and I'm going to hit next several times, so don't worry about this just yet. There is an option if you want to bore construction holes to your frames, so a hole between the face frame and the box. So I would say, yes, I want construction holes, and then the next question is going to be where when joining the top and the bottom. So it's going to ask a few more questions to be more specific for those particular holes. Another one, and it's in here again, it was right up at front. You have the option to bore construction. You have the option to add an IntelliJoint. There's also this option for hardware. So if you've set up, and there is a RayFix that's already set up, you can set up an actual hardware connector and apply it to the cabinetry. So the hardware has its own things with it, and then you answer more questions. There's also a question for mitered parts, how you want to shift or not the holes for any miters. And one of the big ones, and it's on, well, not those, it's on every part. Face frame, frameless, doesn't matter. The first question you're going to get for every part is how you want to define your edge banding. So you've got your face, the left and right, and the back. You can assign if it's interior or exterior, or in my case, I added that hardwood cap. You can assign the edge banding to which, if any, edges need to have edge banding on them. And like I said, it's every part, the adjustable shelf, the drawer stretcher, the partition. So if you do want to, edge band the top and the bottom of a part for some reason, you can set that up right off the bat. And I thought about it and I lost it. There it is. The other new item, it has to do with the top of the cabinet. And what it's going to ask, no matter what type of top you're using, doesn't any of these tops, you will get the question of how you want your one-sided material to lay out. So do I want the good side up or the good side down? But it's going to apply to all of them. In the past, it's only applied if it were a full top. Nothing else looked at that question. So you have the ability now to tell it so your stretchers come out the right way or your web frames come out the right way. All right. Now, the drawer and rollout, really not much here other than edge banding the parts. So just like in the assembly wizard, you're going to have the ability to edge band all the different edges if you want to. All right, let me make sure I'm catching everybody. It looks like it. So now I'm going to start a new job. In the job properties here, there is, and I mentioned this earlier, let's go to Room. In my Finishes tab, where I've always been able to select my interior and exterior colors, I can also select a texture for the interior and for the exterior. So I'll just do that. So you do have that ability. You will also be able to do this at the assembly level. So if you the majority of the job looks like this, but the rest doesn't, or some parts of it don't, you can change those individual cabinets just like you can change the colors on them. So I'm going to go ahead and let me see what I've done in here. That's fine. So I have some idea of what we're going to be looking at, and I'm just going to put a wall in, not much different. I'm going to add a base, and I'll go ahead and grab an upper cabinet as well, just to have a couple items in here. Okay. If I right-click on this base cabinet, if you're familiar with the options that you normally or you've always had with a base cabinet, you'll notice that leg types, that option is missing. It's been moved. And if I right-click on this cabinet and go to Properties, I have a new tab in here for legs. By default, it's set to none. I select, I can then go grab the type of leg I want on that cabinet. So I'll put a caster on here. I click OK, and it adds casters and takes away the toe kick. Now, my construction method sends my end panels to the floor, so I'd have to deal with that separately. But it will place those wheels, those casters, on my cabinet as they were set, as I have them set in my assembly wizard. Now, what I did for that, because my cabinet has a toe kick, is I actually went through the questions, and I'll go in here just to show you. Open. I went through the toe kick and went through and told it that it had legs, so I could put its placement, how far in and how far back and that sort of thing, where the legs would need to go. Finished it, and then went back through and made it into my toe kick again. So that way the program can remember and know how to place it when I do put a leg or a caster or a bun foot on that particular cabinet. So it's just a trick to tell it where to place them. Otherwise, it's going to be on the very edges, and then probably not necessarily the look you're going to want to go with. I'm just going to double click on this cabinet, and I will go to the section view. And if I right click on these doors and go to properties, I have this section door option. Now this has been expanded. I can section the door, so if I want a mid-rail in there, if I want to change the size of something, I can do that. But what I can also do is I'll select this top panel. I can change the material of the individual parts and pieces in this door, and I can change the color. So I'm going to change this and I want that one. I want my 3/4 solid maple, so I'm going to select that one. And I'll go ahead and change the color just so you can see it. I have to turn off my automatic at that point, and forget that. I'm going to search. I find it much easier to search for those things rather than dig through all the color swatches. So just that one panel has been modified. So if we look at my colored in 3D view, everything else is still, well, we render it, we might see the grain difference. Everything else is cherry, and now I've got maple panels on the top portion of that. So you have some flexibility in there when you go in and modify your doors now. Oh, go to the plan view of this little guy. If you're going to add a molding to an individual assembly, what's new in here is the ability to change the material of that molding when you go. So, you know, I must have had my job set up. I didn't look all the way through it. I must have had my job set up with oak molding. I want this to be maple because it's going to match those panels. I can go and find, oh, well, that's the last one I just used, so we'll just grab that one. So I go and find the different material I want to use on that particular molding before I even draw it. So just one more little added feature in there to give you a little bit more flexibility. All right, go back out to the room here, and we'll look at the elevation. In CAD, we have a few new little features in here. In this join option, I'm going to draw a couple of lines. Apparently they're going to be crooked lines, and that's okay. So we have a new option in this drop-down under Join. Consolidate is the one we've had, but it used to be called Connect, not to be confusing. But Consolidate will allow, like this is made up of 3 individual separate lines. Well, once I drew it, I got to thinking I probably should have grabbed my polyline tool so it was all one piece. I don't want it breaking apart. If I go to Consolidate and I select those parts, I'm creating it now that it's one unit. So I'm consolidating it. I'm making all the pieces one. The Connect tool is basically, if you've used AutoCAD, there's an extend tool. So if you've got 2 lines and they don't quite line up or meet, I would do an extend to make this one meet this one. But now I have this connect, and our trick has been to go and add a fillet, and then we say the radius is at 0, and then that'll give us our corner. Connect is doing that with one less step. So it's going to resize those so they fit and come to a corner. So it's one step less than setting this, saying it's a 0 radius, and then putting it together to get your square corner. But there is something new with the fillet. And if I draw a little, let's do an arc, and I'll run this line off of it. In the past, if I had a straight line and an arc, or 2 arcs coming together, that was the option. I couldn't radius that connection. We can now. Let's do a little bit bigger. If I have, and I know this is an extreme one, but if I have a line and an arc coming together and I want to radius that connection, I can now do that. So we've got a little more flexibility with the curves where we were more limited previously. Okay. Now I'm going to move on out of CAD, and I'll go ahead and send this to drawing. And we'll go to the drawing page, and I'll bring this scene onto the paper. If you notice, we have little grips around the scene now. Previously, you would have to grab the scene if you wanted to move it If you wanted to resize it, you would have to right-click on it and go to Scale, and you still can. But you can also grab it with these little grips and change the size of it. You can rescale it this way now, which can be a little easier if you're just trying to fill in the space or get into this area. And notice how it behaved. I grabbed it, but it is scaling. It's not letting me stretch it, like silly putty it, so that it doesn't represent itself any longer. It's going to keep it to a scale. It'll just be one of those user scales. It'll be some random percentage, but you don't have to go in and toggle and find, that perfect size. You can stretch and get it to where you need it to be. There's a new feature here in the drawings library, and it has to do with the symbols. If you were wanting to modify a title block or an assembly sheet or any of these other items, you have to do it here in the drawings library. Symbols was the exception to that rule. Symbols, I would have had to go into CAD, bring the symbol out, modify it, and then save it back into the symbols library. Now we do have the ability to edit. So if I want to make a change to this, I'll just hit edit, make my modifications, and when I return out, it'll save it on top of itself, so you don't end up with all these duplicates of slightly different options. Now, if you do want, you can copy them, you can change them in their ranking, you can do any of this kind of things that we could before, but now you can copy and you can modify in here, and should be able to keep your symbols library a little bit cleaner that way and not have old ones, but you can't remember which one you want to delete. You can come in here and modify them a lot more simply. Okay, I'm going to go over to reports and to the bid center. A couple of things here in the bid center. One, there is a new view, and that is for those vendors. And since I don't have a full material schedule set up with vendors actually being used, mine's blank, unfortunately, but what this will allow you to do is, bring in your pricing and then assign which vendors you want to use. So if you do have multiple vendors on different materials within a job, you can select who you're buying from, who you're purchasing from, based on some different criteria. So if I don't touch this, it's going to use my default vendor on everything. I can have the program find what's going to give me the best profit by selecting the different vendors. Select all the least expensive, select the most expensive, group it together so I'm buying from the fewest number of vendors, or just use the defaults. So you can have some ability to manipulate those vendors once you get here, even though you set your defaults, and that might not be the right answer for this particular job. The other thing that's new in here, well, it's a bunch of new little things. In the rate tables, they have added about, 43 new bid methods and report variables to price with. So you've got, and just to name a couple of them. Oh, wrong page, sorry. For corner assemblies, and that's right here on this page that I've got open, per 45-degree corner cabinet and per 90-degree corner cabinet. So you can have a price associated just with those. Per adjustable shelf is new. There's a couple of them for if you have an arc in a shape, in a part, or in a countertop. So a per arc charge. There's a lot to do with closets, per closet door, per closet vertical, per drawer stretcher. So they've added quite a few of these. If the bid center is something that you're using, I would definitely go into the help files and take a look at these new methods. They'll give you descriptions in that of what they're doing, what they're looking for, and what they're pricing for you. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of here and go back out to report. And I'm going to go into the report center. This is one that some of you have probably heard rumors about, if not already seen it. But the report center looks a little bit different. We have this preview pane that if you have multiple pages to a report, you'll see them here. So I can still navigate by using these arrows up at the top, but I can also navigate by selecting a different page over in this preview area. So it's just a little bit different function in here. Now if I go to setup reports, there's a little different icon to these items here now. The CV, the square, means that it came from Solid. It's one that we've created. There's also these little torsos, these little people. Those are reports that you've created. If you haven't heard, if you didn't know, Crystal Reports is no longer the generator we're using to make reports. It's all internal now. So that's why the difference of the icons. So the ones that have the CV next to them, you can't change those and you cannot delete those, but you can copy them all day long. So you are able to copy those reports and then make them your own. So if there's one or two of them here that you like, but you'd like them better if they just did something else, you can do that, and you have the ability to do that. In use or not in use is the same, behavior as before. If it's green, then it's in use. It's in one of the categories somewhere. So it's door cut list. It's telling me what group it's in under this header here. If I look at the groups, it's selected there. You just add them. If I want to add one, I select the one I want to add, and then there we go, I'll put it in that one. I put it in the category I wanted to put in. At the bottom of this list, I have my reports that I've modified or created. And that's the difference of the icon there. So these, I can delete these because I've made them. And I can modify them up in here. So I can create a new report. It just opens up a blank report. The design, this is where you're going to modify it. This is like your edit, that you can adjust what's in here. You have a whole series of variables on the side that you can add, and basically, just bring something. It's not going to let me bring this in. Since I've already got stuff on here, I'm not going to be able to bring it in there because the page is being taken over by this list here. But these are the variables that you can bring in. There's a ton of them as you go through and open things up. There's more things to open up, so you have a lot of different options in here, and then you can lay out your report how you want to. There will be classes on how to do this. Like I said, as I said at the beginning of this, most of what I'm doing is just kind of giving you an overview. If you really want to dig into this, we will have some classes available in the near future for any of these things, and the reports being one of them. And I'm sure the reports are going to be one of the bigger ones that people are going to want to dig into and modify. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and return out of here. And let's see, the export. If you want to export your reports, they've made this interface a little bit easier, a little bit more robust. You can certainly print it, but you can also send it direct to certain things. So you can, go directly to a PDF if you want. So you have some options in there. See what you might change out of that. And then the print option, if I have it, if I hit the print reports in a group, it's going to print all of the ones out of this group that I've got highlighted. So it's going to print all 3 of my reports. Like before, if I just wanted this one cut list, I would just hit the printer icon and only the one that's highlighted will go to my printer. So it's a little bit different behavior there. And now I'm going to go out here to the floor plan. Just a couple of general items here. The SketchUp import has been upgraded to SketchUp 2014. So it will now recognize layers, materials, colors, or components. So just a little bit more user-friendly, being able to bring in newer SketchUp models, not having to have them back down a couple of years, so you can bring in more information. And I mentioned this, and I'm going to mention it again. When you go to shape something, and this is any level of solid, you're going to be using CAD tools. So if I want to shape this cabinet, I'm going to have CAD tools. If I have a countertop, there it is, and I add a new top, I'm going to have CAD tools. So I will just draw that out. So yeah, now I have a countertop on there, but I'm using CAD tools. If you're doing something with molding, same thing. I'm going to have these CAD tools. Now, this one, to me, at this point, when you're using a chain line, doesn't feel a whole lot different than how you've done it in the past. So some of these things are going to feel foreign to you at first. Some of them, you're going to be right used to it, no big deal. So I'll return that and save the shape, and I've got my crown molding. So just your tools are different, and it'll take some getting used to. You've been thinking about it one way for a while, so it will take a little getting used to be looking at these other tools, but having them all coming out and working the same will make everything easier in the long run. So I believe that is it for today's materials.
This completes today's training movie. I would like to remind you of your training options. The help files are available within each Cabinet Vision product. The eSupport technical website is a great resource for questions and answers and features a technician-monitored forum. Regional training classes are available, so please contact your customer service representative for the classes in your area. If you would like someone to come on-site to your location and train your team, this can be arranged. Online training is a very convenient method for training over the Internet. The e-learning training series is a series of topics which you can purchase online and download for immediate use. If you have questions about this or anything else, please go to our website, cabinetvision.com. We look forward to you joining us next time. Thank you for watching.